Well, hello there, you beautiful, beautiful, amazing, wonderful people. It's Monday, baby. It's Monday. I've actually got the day right. Today is definitely 100% Monday. You can take that to the bank. You're looking absolutely amazing, by the way. You must have had a good weekend. I've been busy, but we are going to get straight into the meat and potatoes as we have got a bit to get through in this video. Now, later on in video 2, I'm going to be talking specifically about Steve Gonsalves. We're going to be looking at one of the motions that was filed in the court documentation that would seemingly suggest that families in the courtroom may be under scrutiny during the trial of Bryan Kohberger. But in this video, what you're going to get to learn is that obviously Ann Taylor, that we've kind of wondered what her gameplay is. Sometimes we can trust her, sometimes we feel that she's perhaps not firing on all cylinders. But yeah, there seems to be method in the madness, and are there things that we've seen that could potentially mean that makes sense? This probably doesn't make sense, but it will as the video goes on. And last but by no means least, I'm going to be showing you the post that was originally posted on the University of Idaho, their Facebook page, regarding the camera and what was caught on that camera on the night of this atrocity. But anyway, let's get into it first of all. So, again, we've questioned Ann Taylor. Oh, and by the way, if you're not subscribed, do subscribe. And if you haven't liked the video, do it, because I know you're going to like it. I know you're going to like it, and it just helps other people see it. And that's what we want to do. Because at the moment, there's a lot of people who believe Bryan Kohberger did this crime and that he should be executed for it. And I think that that's a little bit premature.
I don't follow it. I help make it.
Isn't it funny how someone in the UK sort of feels more strongly about the constitutional rights of American citizens than people in the US themselves? But go figure. That emoji. So, here we go. So, over 2 years after 4 students were fatally killed, we'll say, in Idaho, the defense strategy emerges. For more than 2 years since the fatal stabbings of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho, a wide-ranging gag order has limited the public's understanding of the case against Bryan Kohberger. Not just against Bryan Kohberger, the entire situation. They have gagged so much that nothing really makes sense, while simultaneously they have allowed this gag order to become weaponized and allow the media to basically say pretty much whatever they want. And because they're biased, all of that information that comes out is heavily against Bryan Kohberger. So they twist and manipulate every single thing. Well, ultimately, there isn't really any solid evidence that would suggest that Bryan Kohberger is a bad person. Yes, he's been accused of a crime, but there isn't anything that has subsequently come up that has really supported the notion that Bryan Kohberger could be a killer. That's in my opinion. But witness testimony revealed in a recently unsealed transcript of a court hearing and the hiring of a new attorney are the clearest clues yet as to the defense's main focus, challenging the DNA evidence. The prosecution's most important piece of evidence is a DNA sample taken from a knife sheath left at the crime scene. That's what we're being told, that this was left at the crime scene, and furthermore, we're being told that the DNA that was on that knife sheath was indeed Bryan Kohberger's. I think that's what's in question here. Was the knife sheath truly found there? And if it was found there, was the DNA that was on it truly Bryan Kohberger's, or did they manipulate the results? Is there some way that the results could have been misconstrued? Now, what I will say is we've heard, for those of you who follow the Madeleine McCann case and the Julia Wendell, there was reports that came out in the media not that long ago that would suggest that Julia Wendell shared approximately 86% of her DNA with the McCann father, Jerry McCann. So these are things that come out in the media, and people read that, people see it, and they take that as gospel. Now, what we're seeing in the Idaho 4 case is that the entire IGG situation has been gagged. They don't seemingly want it challenged. There seems to be elements of it that were done in a way that is not legal, or certainly against terms of service, and I think this is gonna go down to does the result justify the means? Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, do people really care how they get to a result if the result is right. But I don't think it's even that, because how do you know that the result is right if the way that they got to the result isn't proper? Do you know what I mean? And that's the grey area, isn't it? You allow people to do things that isn't proper, and all of a sudden, can you truly trust the result? And I think that's what we're seeing in the Bryan Kohberger situation. We've had to bring in a specialist that comes in who has been involved in excess of 200 cases around this. They're seeing issues, they're seeing concerns, and they want to bring that to light. But I was watching Bloodline. I don't know whether any of you have seen it. It's 3 seasons, Bloodline. It's about a family who are a fucking nightmare. But there's a specific scene where one of the brothers has killed a cop, and the guy who's trying to help him get away with it is talking about DNA and basically planting DNA, and talks about the fact that jurors love DNA. They love science. And that's the thing in the Bryan Kohberger case. You extract the DNA out of this equation, and before you know it, you don't have a case, which feeds into even more. When they had blood DNA at the scene of this crime, why did they not go all the way, go the whole 9 yards with it? Why was it this singular, small, tiny piece of transfer DNA on a knife sheath, on the button snap of this knife sheath? Now, I get it. You might find it on there and you may find that is relevant. But when you've got this entire crime and the magnitude of it, the gravity of it, and them seeing what has gone on in that house, and you've seemingly got 2 witnesses who don't really say they saw anything or heard anything. Yeah, we've got rumblings of perhaps seeing someone leave, but the speed that it was done, and apparently, and we don't know how true this is, but the person who you accuse of doing it turns around and says, well, has anybody else been arrested? Now, there's loads of things that caveat off that. Did he say it? Didn't he say it? Was he just mean? And because everyone's broken into his house, have they arrested other people inside the house? That makes sense as well. But ultimately, this person has said, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. You've got the wrong person. Now, don't get me wrong. Anybody being accused of a crime like this is likely to turn around and say, I didn't do it. But you've also got to cover all your bases. And when you've got other DNA at the scene, and you know that the jurors love DNA, they love it, they thrive off it, they love science, and, you know, it helps to bolster your case. I don't understand why, when you've got DNA at the crime scene that is actual blood, it's blood DNA. So it's a stronger DNA than what your touch, your skin, your transfer DNA. So I would have thought that they'd have even take that through the channels, because they could think that the person who they want to accuse of doing this crime, that could have been additional DNA from them. If you've got fingerprint DNA or transfer DNA, you could turn around and think, well, hold on a second, that person could have not, they may not have been wearing gloves, or maybe a glove split, and that's why we've got the transfer DNA on this knife sheath, and that may have led to them hurting themselves during this huge because we are told by Steve Gonsalves, and again I'll speak more about him later, but they put up one hell of a fight. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that this DNA could have belonged to Bryan Kohberger then. So why would you not want to take that all the way down the channel, all the way down the road? Now, don't get me wrong, maybe they did, and I'm just wrong. But it seems that they don't. They know that it's a male DNA. They've suggested that it's male, so perhaps they did. But why would you not want to take it all the way down the road, even to see if there was somebody who was connected to Bryan Kohberger, to further solidify your attack on him? You're struggling, you're floundering around trying to connect his car, you're trying to connect phone situations, and you've got to the point where you can't really connect the car because you have to extrapolate on information that doesn't fully paint that picture, so you have to fill in a load of blanks, so that becomes circumstantial. You've also got the phone situation where you have to just suggest that, well, he might have turned his phone off. but it might have been out of signal. If it was out of signal, that means that he weren't in the area then, because he would have been in, or the phone would have been in an area with no cell service, no cell support. Now, in their own PCA, they allude to the fact that they can't be sure that he turned his phone off, even though I'll suggest to you now that they would know if he'd turned his phone off, because there is a way to say, to find out whether a phone has had a hard closure or a soft closure. So to me, they know that the phone wasn't turned off, or there's a way of knowing. And again, if I'm wrong, let me know down below. But that's what I've been led to believe in other cases that we've spoken about. I think Kylie Rodney, some phone cellular specialist, had come out in that and was able to say that the phone had died, not the phone had been physically shut off by the user. But again, I'm not a specialist. I'm just going by what we learn in other cases. So when we talk about hiding people, hiding individuals, I still say that what we're seeing is indicative of a prosecution, or we're talking about law enforcement who are looking to hide DNA from jurors who love science and love DNA. Because as soon as you introduce that into the mix, and don't get me started on the fact that they're now trying to suppress and make it so that cannot even be brought up. And why is that? Because they know as soon as the jurors cotton onto it that there is other DNA found at the scene, there was blood found at the scene, and then you have a DNA specialist who comes in and manages to rubbish and destroy the trace, touch, transfer DNA that seemingly they're suggesting exists on this knife sheath. Then they have a problem, because their case then becomes hugely circumstantial. It seems that they've tried to bend the PCA to fit specific narratives to drive a certain feeling against Bryan Kohberger in the public. And before you know it, law enforcement looks corrupt as fuck, because it looks like they've got nothing. They've relied heavily upon poisoning everybody around the case, and they've had help too. Steve Gonsalves, who at some point something just went the other way, and he went from being open-minded, kind of, if he did it, he'll do it, he needs to go through the system, and an advocate for being fair, to fuck him, let's shoot him now. And maybe Steve Gonsalves just got his balls in a jar and he's going along with Christie. I don't know. But there was a point where Steve Gonsalves, his direction changed heavily. It was fucking exit stays left. But then we get on to other things that we've heard, and it takes me back to the night of this crime. And on the screen here, which I will bring up. No, I'm not going to bring up on here. I'm going to bring up on here. This is the post from... This was the University of Idaho page, right? So the University of Idaho page, and this was removed. There was a bit of backlash over this being posted, because I think that they posted it and then realised that they perhaps shouldn't have posted it. But it reads, I just found out my remote photography group has video from a tripod that was stationed behind the house. It recorded from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and shows a woman running from the side of the house as a truck entered the driveway. She ran away from the house and right by our tripod at approximately, roughly, not exact, 2 a.m. A group member removed the tripod, and I don't know who has the video. It is the group's right to not disclose why we record, but we would send in recordings in special circumstances. So what happened to that? Or was that just a lie? Did that not happen? Because again, we're going right back. Let me just see whether that's got a date on it. You'll see, because you've got it on the screen. But I've just wiped it off and I can't see it. Was there a date? November 23rd. So November 23rd, someone is posting on the University of Idaho's own page that they had a camera set up, and again, that caused a bit of backlash. There weren't any backlash that said that's a lie. It was more backlash that we shouldn't be posting this on here. Get it off. This is an ongoing investigation, and you're putting information on here that is potentially harmful or what is going on. But what happened to that? So you've got a truck pulling into the driveway, and anybody who's followed all the Linda Lane footage and things like that will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say it makes sense that you've got this situation that suggests that a truck pulls into the driveway, and then you've got a female seen running away from the property. And I know we've spoken about this previously, but what happens to all this stuff? What happened to all this? Again, are we just going to say that don't exist? Are we going to say that it was false, fake, not bring it up, it's not important? And then we're going to trust the linchpin of this entire case is DNA found on a knife sheath. And I say that in the loosest term possible because I don't believe that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath at the scene of this crime. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. It's yet to be shown in a way that absolutely proves beyond a reasonable doubt that that is actually what happened here. And all of the information that they could potentially show you to prove it, they haven't done so. Will they do it in trial? Who knows? But that blood is always going to be an issue. And why are they trying to hide it? And it goes back to the same old thing. And this is video 3 of numerous parts that would suggest that Bryan Kohberger is being framed for something that he didn't do. They've built a case that is hugely circumstantial with a seemingly unscrupulous acquisition of DNA. And then we even have things that were said by the witnesses that they were carrying a vacuum cleaner. Were they carrying a vacuum cleaner, or were they carrying something a lot larger than a K-bar knife? Perhaps it was another form of grotesque weaponry. Do you know what I mean? Who knows? Who knows? Again, we've had things that have cropped up that would suggest that the injuries were different to what you would expect to be inflicted by the aforementioned K-bar. We've not got a murder weapon. We've never seen a murder weapon. We've just been alluded to and conditioned to believe that that's what it is. We've also been conditioned to believe that the driver drove a white Hyundai Elantra. Well, ultimately, we don't know. But let me know what you think. What is going on here? But as the defense start to bring in these specialists to challenge the DNA, what happens if they do manage to destroy that DNA as credible evidence? And what if they are able to bring up the fact that there was blood found? What are the questions going to be, and how are they going to answer them? What are they just going to say because of a tiering system that they weren't able to test this through CODIS, for instance, because they already had a sample and it would cause issues? Fuck off. Get out of here. So you're saying if there was a crime scene where there was multiple perpetrators, they wouldn't test everybody involved. They wouldn't test the multiple samples that they found. They'd just get one and then ignore everything else. I ain't buying it. I don't believe it. Love you all, and I'll see you in video 2 later. Mwah.